Welcome to this explainer. Okay, so today we are diving into something absolutely wild. Think about it. Millions of us recite this text every single day, right? We weep at its rhythm, we literally decorate our living room walls with these verses. But what if I told you we're almost entirely blind to its actual architecture? We're going to look at the text today, not as some collection of ancient historical stories, but as a living, breathing, operating system. So it begs the question, why are we so blind to this? Why on earth do we treat this incredibly complex operating system like a simple bedtime storybook, just completely missing the underlying code that actually runs the whole thing? Well, it turns out it's not an accident. The sources we're unpacking today argue that this blindness is actually a built-in function of how we choose to read. Look at verse 1745. It explicitly states that when the text is recited, a concealed partition, a ḥijāb, is placed between the reader and the profound truths of the hereafter. Now, it's easy to think of this as some arbitrary punishment, like a cruel act of predestination. But actually, according to the analysis, it's a self-applied topological consequence of our own reading habits. When we read carelessly, we literally install our own firewall against the truth. Here's the roadmap for our explainer today. 1. The architecture of negligence. 2. The Sāmirī Function. 3. The anatomy of sacrifice. 4. The blasted mountain. And finally 5. The cubic function of rescue. Let's just jump right in. Section 1. The architecture of negligence, identifying the operating system bug. Let's diagnose what's actually causing this spiritual blindness. At the core of this bug is a massive tension between two totally different ways of interacting with the text. On one hand, you've got the storybook approach. This is the dunya, the surface level. It's when we just read for the narrative, accumulating isolated verses without ever seeing how they connect. On the flip side, we have the operating system. This is the akhira, the structural pattern, the hidden return mechanism, the living code. The sources explain that when the human heart actively chooses that surface level over the deep pattern, the heart literally constricts. The disease of negligence actually grows. Because we insist on reading the code as a story, the code simply hides itself from us. And the mechanics behind that choice come down to two distinct nodes of human perception. First up is D10, or absar. Think of this as your physical sight. It behaves kind of like a localized particle. It's hyper-focused on surface accumulation, wealth, the visible world. But then, in contrast, we have I9, or qulūb, the inner heart. This operates much more like a distributed wave. It's designed not just to look, but to truly witness the deep underlying code. So the whole tension is right here. Our D10 physical sight is obsessively drawn to the storybook, while our I9 heart is designed to process the operating system. When D10 dominates, we basically go blind to the reality. Moving on to Section 2, the Sāmirī Function, the narrative virus. So who or what is fabricating these false stories we keep telling ourselves? The Quran uses the Arabic root letters SMR to describe the Sāmirī. Now, in this framework, the Sāmirī isn't just some ancient historical guy from the time of Moses. It represents a function inside all of us. It is the storyteller, the exact mechanism that fabricates narrative from idle talk. It's the thing that projects our own ego and desires right onto the text. Seriously, ask yourself, are you running the Sāmirī function in your own reading? Just look at the Sāmirī's own profound confession in verse 2096. Listen to the wording. I saw what they did not see. So I took a handful from the track, the athar, of the messenger, and threw it. Thus did my soul entice me. This is absolutely crucial. The Sāmirī doesn't take the living, breathing messenger. It only takes the footprint, the isolated trace, the disconnected historical tradition. And from that tiny mere trace, the ego builds an entire idol. To break down how this virus works, the Sāmirī methodology completely ignores the comprehensive living book. Instead, it isolates a single footprint or trace. Then, it projects the nafs, the human ego, directly onto that fragment. And the result? It builds a golden calf, a hollow idol, and somehow magically makes it speak. But the really tragic irony here is that when we read the text through the Sāmirī function, we aren't actually hearing divine guidance at all. We're trapped in a massive feedback loop, hearing nothing but the echoes of our own desires. Which brings us to Section 3, the anatomy of sacrifice, confronting the ego. If the ego is this destructive virus, how do we actually patch the system? We find the answer in the Arabic root NSK. Now, this word represents sacrifice, but it goes way, way beyond just ritual slaughter. It implies deep acceptance and absolute devotion. See, the ego always claims it's doing destructive things for a righteous cause, right? It constantly distorts sacrifice into an act of taking. But true sacrifice, NSK, is the literal software patch required to correct the corrupted nafs. It's all about letting go of our accumulated illusions, not destroying other things. And honestly, nothing captures this struggle better than the famous trial of King Daud, or David, in verse 38-24. Imagine this. Two brothers come to him for judgment. One has 99 ewes, the other has only one. And the brother with 99 is demanding that single ewe to complete his flock of 100. The topology of this is fascinating because it reveals a massive collision. On one side, you've got the might of righteousness. That's the 99 ewes. This is our D10 node again, right? It's pure accumulation bias. It's the ego using the disguise of righteousness to justify taking more, to dominate the whole narrative. On the completely opposite side, you have the silent taqwa, the pure, singular truth represented by that one single ewe. Think of Habil, or Abel, who was willing to bear the sacrifice rather than extend his hand to kill. That's the I9 heart. It's willing to return and ask rather than just take. So you have this constant tension where the D10, might of the 99, is always threatening to consume the singular, silent truth of the one. Let's move to section 4, the blasted mountain, the climax of collapse. What exactly happens when the rigid illusions of our ego finally slam into the raw power of the operating system? Well, we get a clear answer in verse 7:143. Moses asks to see the divine directly. The response? He's told to look at the mountain. When the true manifest, the pure, unfiltered source code arrives, the mountain simply cannot handle the voltage. It is blasted to dust. But guys, this isn't just any random rock. In this framework, the mountain represents the rigid D100 mass of our own ego. In fact, it is the exact same metaphorical mountain that Noah's son arrogantly tried to hide behind to escape the flood in verse 11:43. The reality is, the mountain of D100 rigidity cannot save you. When the truth truly manifests, the mountain of ego you're hiding behind will literally be pulverized. And this pulverized mountain triggers a cascading chain reaction of confessions built right into the text. When the ego's illusions shatter, confession immediately follows. It's a topological chain. First, node 1. The Queen of Sheba steps on what she thinks is water, but it's actually a glass floor. Her illusion completely shatters, and she submits. Node 2. The wife of Al-Azi in the story of Joseph finally admits the truth, openly stating her ego commanded her to evil. And this cascades all the way down to node 3, the ultimate storyteller, Shaitan himself, who totally exposes the illusion, confessing that he actually had zero authority over anyone. He merely invited, and the ego accepted. The system systematically, piece by piece, dismantles our illusion. Which brings us to our final section, section 5, the cubic function of rescue, the system reboot. We've seen the bugs, so let's look at the exact mathematical mechanism the text uses to rescue the reader. The sources identify this as the 2260 cubic function. This verse tells the story of Abraham, who is instructed to take 4 birds, twist them, separate them, distribute their pieces across different mountains, and then call them back. And they return to him rushing. This is a flawless, perfect, topological demonstration of a system reboot. It shows exactly how fractured pieces, representing our broken D10 perception, are separated, then distributed into the hidden I9 wavefield, and then miraculously called back into a seamless, unified whole. And we can see how this mathematical function builds into an entire narrative arc. The whole story of Yusuf, or Joseph, is quite literally this cubic function in action. Think about it. Step 1, separation. He is thrown into the well, a brutal, traumatic D10 fracture of the family. Step 2, distribution. He's dispersed through the unseen I9 propagation channels of Egypt, navigating the prison and then the palace. And finally, step 3, return. In verse 100, the father, the son, and the fractured brothers reunite at the throne. The separated pieces are called back. The loop is totally closed. Ultimately, the D10 fracture is completely healed. The deep code patches the system. The original sin of transgression, represented all the way back by Cain taking from Habil, is finally fully purified by the structural mechanism of sacrifice and return. The fragmented, isolated nightmare of the ego ends, and the unified dream actually becomes reality. Which leaves us with one final profound question for you to consider today. Now that you've seen the architecture, the bugs, the viruses, and the massive system reboots built right into the text itself, are you going to just keep reading it like a simple storybook, or are you finally ready to witness the code? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll catch you next time.